And welcome to the Writer's Life, the place where you get the sight, sound, smell, taste of my particular writer's life. Lights in my eyes. And where you get the truth about the writer's life. My truth, anyway, which could be, I don't know, messed up. But anyway, subscribe if you haven't already. Punch the like button. Tap the bell real gently for the notifications, or for notifications so that you don't miss out on one single wow, exciting video. How exciting they are. Don't forget to go to the store, vinsandrew.com, www.vinsandrew.com, for all your thriller needs. Some books you can buy direct and save. All right, so with that, I will introduce you to Robin Catalano. She is the most successful travel writer I know personally, and I'm not kidding. I mean, this person writes for National Geographic, Travel and Leisure. She probably writes for Jesus himself. I don't know, but she ghostwrites for him because, believe it or not, he can't write. But anyway, I'm really pleased to have her here because actually Robin does a job that I've always wanted to do, but I just, a person has to know the limitations, and I could never really get that right angle for a decent travel article. Don't ask me why. Probably because you have to be accurate, tell the truth, and be a good journalist. Am I onto something there, Robin?
Yeah, usually helps.
Yeah. So how long have you been doing this gig?
Oof.
And what a gig it is.
Yeah, it's an interesting one for sure. Been writing professionally for over 20 years now. The travel writing on and off for about 15. The earliest iteration of my travel writing, I didn't really even know I was travel writing. I was working for a wine and food magazine. And I used to go on trips and then write about, wine salons or the landscape for growing a particular type of wine. And those were my earliest forays into travel writing before I even knew that that's what I was doing. And I just have to ask, you've got like a ruler or something there. You mentioned Jesus. Just wondering if you're going Catholic nun on me.
Yes, I did a long time ago, actually. My habit's in the closet. So I'm a closet nun, I guess.
You got to get that out for home.
Yeah, I identify as a nun on the weekends. Hey, we're not going there like that. There's going to be another episode on that later on. Yeah, I like to have my ruler. I like Johnny Carson had his pen or his pencil. When you go, that's now you can date me. Johnny Carson's been off the air how long?
Oh God, long time.
20 years, something like that. I don't know, maybe longer, whatever. But that's interesting. So you just sort of fell into it, huh?
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, I would say so.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you still query and wait, do you not?
Sadly, yes. I wish I could tell you otherwise, but that is the unfortunate circumstance, I guess, for most freelance journalists, and in the travel world even more so, because it's hyper competitive and there are just not that many assignments to go around anymore. So right. It is this constant cycle of going somewhere, coming up with ideas, writing multiple pitches based on just one trip, so I have to find different angles on that same
right.
trip, and then blasting them out to different editors. And I don't wait anymore like I used to. Back in the day, it was, no simultaneous submissions. You would just send one pitch at a time to one publication. I don't do that anymore because I don't have time and they don't have time to answer me. So I blast it out to probably 10 or 15 different publications at a time.
Right. That's how I used to do it. Both journalism and fiction. I would, they would say, well, just send it one at a time, no duplicate submissions, bullshit. Like we
take you 6 weeks to get back to me. I'm sending it to somebody else in the meantime.
Right. But I would imagine by now you've established some pretty decent relationships with some of the ads out there.
Yeah, I think so. I have a few kind of favorite editors that I've worked with multiple times. It's always a little bit of a crapshoot. Editors move on from a publication, so you have to try to establish relationships with other people at the publication if you can. Try to work within the new system, which is always a trick. Yeah, but I've got probably 4 or 5 editors that I feel like I could reach out to them on a regular basis and say, hey, is this something you might be interested in?
Right, right. And you just came back from where?
Austria.
How was that?
Oh my God, that was so cool. That was super cool. Yes,
Were
as we
you,
discussed, it is the land of amazing food. So that was a
yeah,
that was a big draw for me. But it
yes,
also has a really beautiful landscape. And I was not in I was in Vienna, but I wasn't in Salzburg or some of the other more famous cities toward the
right.
east. I was in Burgenland,
Okay,
which is on the western side near the Hungarian border. Completely different landscape and just super cool. Lots of great sustainability and regenerative measures going on there. So it was a really eye-opening trip. I loved it.
right. How about the green streams? I mean, just the green water. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
remarkable.
And there was something they told me about that when we were when I was in Vienna. I did a vineyard tour, and the vineyards in Vienna are wild. It's the only municipality in the world that grows a significant percentage of its wine within city limits. And they have all of these, hillsides in Vienna where you walk up and you're in the vineyard, you're looking down over the Danube. And the Danube, of course, is kind of split in two in Vienna because it has an artificial island in the middle that helps with, I believe, storm surges. But one side of it is that green color that you were talking about, which has something to do with the algae. I know I wrote it down. Don't remember exactly. Terrible travel writer. But yeah, it is pretty cool to see.
Big Philly is commenting, and he'd love to know what place you haven't been yet that you are just dying to go and write about.
Ooh, wow.
If you had your druthers.
If I had my druthers, if I had tons of money and I didn't have to worry about who I was pitching, I would probably go to New Zealand. It just looks like the perfect combination of outdoors, nature, conservation, which are topics near and dear to my heart. And then there is a really brilliant local food scene there. Again,
Right.
another topic I love. But just the landscape is so extraordinary. It just looks like another planet. So that would
Right,
definitely be something that would be right on the top of my list.
right. I've done quite a bit of traveling with Australians and New Zealanders,
Mhm.
and while for the most part everybody plays nice in the sandbox, it's also quite amazing how some of them don't get along.
Really?
And yeah, and I traveled in particular. I went to Vietnam and Cambodia with these two these two Australians from like Crocodile Island or something like that it was called. I don't know what the hell it was called, but and the guy's like, "Well, we're going to be joined by two New Zealanders," and his face just went like tight, big guy, and he was like, "Oh, sheep fuckers," and I'm like, "Did you just say that?" And I'm like, "Give him a chance, man," like or whatever. But I've run into a few things like that. But where do you head next?
Next, I am headed to Spain. My in laws live there. So we're doing 10 days. We'll be in Madrid, Alcalá de Henares, which I just butchered the pronunciation of that. That's kind of outside Madrid. It's a really cool
Right.
old university town. Miguel Cervantes actually was born
Oh,
there and taught
all right.
there. And then doing a few days in the Canary Islands.
Nice. And this is, do you ever, I would imagine you do because I would. You go for your assignment, you get the information for your assignment, you know what you're going to write about, and then you just like, like now I'm kind of like mini vacation.
Oh, this one is actually a real vacation.
Oh,
This
okay.
one is set up as an actual vacation. I think the tough part about being a travel writer is that you never shut off the writer part of yourself, even when you're on
Sure.
vacation. So I'm traveling somewhere, I'm just sort of enjoying myself and having a good time, but I can't help but observe things out in the landscape or things people are talking about, whatever. And that generates a new story idea for me. So then it becomes something of a work trip because I came across something cool and I decide I want to write about it.
Right. Um, what about it? What about the next Tony Bourdainish or Tony Bourdain like travel book?
Oh boy, I don't know. I am actually mulling over a couple of ideas for a travel book. It's the kind of thing I don't necessarily feel like I want to write a nonfiction book, but I feel compelled to because in travel writing in particular, a lot of your street cred comes from books. And
Right.
even though I have been published by 98% of the top magazines in the US and even some abroad, if I don't have that book next to my name, then people, they overlook me, which is a
Right.
continuous theme and very frustrating to have been in the game for this long and feel like I get overlooked. So that's
Right.
something I'm kind of thinking about now. It will probably be more of a guidebook because I don't
Right.
feel quite as attached to that, in which it makes it a little bit easier to write when I don't feel as attached to the subject matter.
Right. Now, when I travel, even to this day, even when I'm gone for 3 months, I still, at 59 years old, I still just bring my backpack. And the first thing I pack in there are like workout stuff. The sneakers go on the side, and then I'll bring like a sweater, depending on whether it's the spring or, I'll be going in December. So sweater, like, just some essentials, any, medicines or whatever I need. And my office, my writing office in my carry-on bag. Well, they're both carry-ons. I'll shove like 8 mini bottles of whiskey in there for the flight, or whatever. And
you might need more depending on where you're going.
Yeah, some of the flights. Yeah, well, you'll run out, right? But no, actually, if I drank all that on a single flight, I'd be sick. But anyway, the simpler the better, the lighter the better, is my opinion, right? How do you travel?
Kind of depends on where I'm going. So, for instance, with Spain, Spain I go to every single year, sometimes twice a year. I adore it. It's kind of my adopted country.
Right.
And the food is so friggin' good.
Yes,
that
it is.
I cannot go there without bringing a lot of food back with me. So in this case, I do have to check a bag, and the checked bag ends up being relatively empty. That's okay because I pack it full of food. So I bring a bunch of stuff home with me on the trip back, which is very exciting. For a lot of my work trips, especially if it's like, a 4-day trip, I just take a rolling carry-on. And I go pretty light. I rewear the same clothes over and over again, which is, among women travelers is sort of like a faux pas because, they always want to look good for their pictures or whatever. I'm not really into taking pictures of myself anyway, so I don't care if the people see me in the same clothes day after day. Doesn't matter.
Right.
So yeah, I have no shame about that.
Right. Well, see, I like to have my picture taken all the time.
Do you?
But this is the uniform I have on now is the standard uniform, period. I've got like 2 of these, and that's about it. In the warm weather, it's like a bush jacket, which everybody thinks is silly, but it serves as like another suitcase. I just pack all those pockets with everything, and
it's
then
very travel writerly.
Right, and then in the cold weather, I bring this one leather coat I have that has lots of interior pockets. And since I'm always traveling alone, that's the only pain. It's like every time you need to use the restroom, you got to bring everything with you and all that stuff. But it's worth it.
Yeah, I can see that, and I admire.
You must travel alone all the time.
No, I travel. It's kind of a mix. So, the Spain trip, I will be with my husband and his family. Right. And then in Austria, I actually took my sister with me. Most of my trips tend to be me by myself. But a lot of them, because I'm traveling a particular destination that wants me to write about them, they are often sponsoring me in some way, whether that's, hotel accommodations or they prepare an itinerary for me. So I am usually looked after, I guess we can put it that way. Like I'm not just swinging in the breeze on my own, trying to figure things out. Oftentimes I do have an assist from the local DMO, destination marketing organization.
Okay. Yeah. When you're traveling, what's your writing day like?
When I'm traveling, I don't really write, to be honest with you. I am not good at working when I'm not in my home office. I have a very specific setup in my home office that I like. I like absolute silence. I don't like distractions. And that's really hard when you're on the road to be able to duplicate those conditions. Even, working in a hotel room, I can do some work if I have written an article and it just needs to be edited down or polished or something like that. I can do that from the road. But writing from scratch, like writing an entire 2,000-word story while I'm on the road, not going to happen.
Right. Interesting, because I'm completely the opposite. I can write, I just mentioned there's construction going on next door, and they're singing, and they're doing all sorts of crap, and but no problem, like I can write over it, and I don't know, but I've written articles and chapters, fiction chapters or whatever, in airport bars. I just have that. I can do it. You know what I'm saying? You either can or you can't. You either can or you can't. And I know writers just like you. Like I gotta have my space. I gotta have the quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think perhaps it's because like I was in grad school and had 2 toddlers running around, and kind of managed to like get the work done while like Thomas the Tank Engine was playing, and friendly arguments and all that sort of stuff. And you just develop this like sort of, I don't know if it's a talent, but it's a method of kind of separating the two. You don't completely block things out, but you're like, well, yeah, this part of me is writing right now, and the other part of me is sort of
That's pretty cool. I actually wish I had that facility, and for a long time I kind of beat myself up about it, because I would meet other writers who would say, after we got back from dinner, they would say, "Oh, I have to go to my hotel room now because I have to finish this article I'm writing." And I'm thinking, am I a slacker? I don't really write on the road, but I've come to terms with it because I think for me, it's the research portion of what I do. And the research is really brain intensive. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of information to absorb and synthesize. So I've come to accept the fact that like, this is just part of my process, just like any other part of a writer's process. This is my first step. I have to do the research. I have to be immersed in it and feel like I'm really in the experience. And then when I come home, once I've organized my notes, I usually do that actually from the airport on the way home. And once I'm home, I can go ahead and sit down and start writing.
Right. Okay, then, when you're home and you start writing, what's your process?
Ooh. Okay. So
what's your writer's life when you are writing?
It's kind of messy, which I think is probably the case for a lot of writers. Typically speaking, I get up absurdly early. I'm up around 5:30 in the morning. I like to be up before anybody else is up. I like the absolute quiet of the earliest part of the morning. And I usually start, I know this is going to sound very woo-woo, but I start with a brief meditation, just about 10 minutes. I also
whatever works.
I teach yoga on the side, so it's kind of like a carryover. But meditation is actually really good for getting me focused on the task at hand. So just that 10 minutes of kind of taking time to breathe and sit in the moment and not think about my to-do list is really instructive. And then I sit down to write. And for instance, like I just finished an article for the BBC, which has, it's really cool, actually. It's got a Napoleon connection, and it's about New Orleans. It's very cool. That'll be coming out in November.
Awesome.
But that story, I kind of broke it down because I had a lot of information. I did a bunch of interviews, and it was a lot of historical information to distill. The Napoleonic Wars are not easy to write in brief. So I ended up having to kind of break it into sections, and I just tasked myself with writing one section a day so that I didn't feel overwhelmed and didn't feel like I had to continue past the point where, when you start to feel like you're getting stale, you've been writing too long. So I didn't want to do that. So I kind of broke it into 4 separate sections, and I just worked on one a day, just the first draft.
Right. And how long would a section be?
Depends. The lead is usually the shortest. That typically runs 3 to 4 paragraphs.
Right.
Other sections run anywhere from, 5 to 8 paragraphs, somewhere thereabouts.
Right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Have you thought about fiction? I had to ask.
Yes.
Before you throw something at at the screen.
Yes, I have worked as a book editor in past lives. So I've always been kind of in tune with the fiction market. I am especially interested in YA, and I know that might sound a little crazy coming from an adult, but I've seen a lot of really good experimental work coming out of the YA market. And I have, let's see, I have written 3 YA novels, all currently sitting in a drawer because like most awesome writers, I sit around and tell myself, well, that's not making money. The articles are making money. So I have to work on the articles. So it's something I definitely need to reframe it. And I need to just get off my butt and start putting them out there because they're not going to publish themselves.
No, they're not. They're not actually. I have one. I mean, it's a tie-in, but I have the Young Chase Baker series, which is a complete and utterly shameful ripoff of the Young Indiana Jones series that was being broadcast in the 1990s. But you know what? I don't care. So I have 2 of those novels, and they are just, to be honest, I do it for myself because to be transported back to 1979 when I was 15 is just so much fun. And, like to just, escape that. And I put all my real friends from back then in there. And, we go on these amazing adventures and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And I got to be honest, I don't know if any young adult has ever read them. For certain, a lot of adults have read them because they'll be like, oh, when are you going to bring out another Young Chase Baker? But I'm like, I don't know yet. It's like the last thing on my list. But I enjoy it. Listen, I don't know if I'm hitting all the tropes with YA because I've never read YA. But a large portion of the audience, they say, are full-blown adults.
I think that's true. And I think it's because for a lot of us, and maybe I'm just speaking for myself here, I'm still very much in touch with that, insecure 15-year-old. I remember so much about my high school years, what it felt like, what it looked like, who I was or who I was trying to be, I guess is a better way to put it. But I remember that stuff so clearly that it's really easy for me to immerse myself in it and write about it.
I know. And it's amazing that like, even at my age, like I'll be like, I'll be lying in bed 6 a.m. or whatever it is. And I'll be like, why did I do that stupid thing? Like when I was 15, 16, 17 years old, and I still regret it, and it's like, get over it, like get over this stuff, or whatever. But sometimes that's the standard, the standard cure all, like get over it and move on. Everybody makes mistakes or whatever, or there's growing pains, or who knows what they want to be when they're 15 years old. You don't, because you're not mature enough. Mm-hmm. But life is also a series of memories, and that's part of it. And you just carry them around like you carry around our backpacks or whatever, and you never lose that. And that's why I think, maybe writing YA is better than seeing The Shrink. You just kind of get it all out there.
Well, I believe in both. I think they're both good things.
Right. Oh, good for you. Good for you. Yes, I have gone to the witch doctor now and then, but it's always like one of my exes was like, oh, we have to go see this person, like, and I'd be like, all right, is he going to say what you want to hear? Is that why we're going to this person, or is this, like, I actually had one guy who did that method where he just doesn't say a word. And if I don't say anything, like, then you don't say a word for the 40 minutes, and it's like, okay, pay the cashier.
Yeah, you're paying $150 to say nothing. Okay.
So like, I knew it was over when I started making stuff up. It was like, like just to have a conversation. It was so awkward. It was just so awkward. And like, that's the method though. But I think that's probably the best method for psychoanalysis.
I don't think anybody appreciates having to go to a psychologist. You know, if they're doing it for the benefit of somebody else, it's a way different feeling than if you're just going because you want to offload whatever weird baggage you're carrying around. And by the way, we all have baggage, you know, to use a travel metaphor here. I hate when people talk about like, oh, you know, I don't want to go out with that person because they have baggage. Guess what? We all have it. If you are over the age of 18, you have baggage. So yeah, I like to personally share my baggage with a stranger once a month. It helps me get things off my chest. It kind of like clears the cobwebs out of my brain. I feel good. I walk out and I can do my work. So,
you know, it's funny because I haven't dated anybody seriously, like probably, well, a long time. And I just got to this point where I'm like, I just can't stand to go through another, like, job interview, well, I was married to this person and we had these kids, and I was married to this other person and that didn't work. And then like, and it's just like, I kind of, like if it metaphorically speaking falls in my lap, like great, otherwise I'm happy.
I think the older we get, the more we, I don't want to say we get set in our ways, because that's not exactly it. Maybe that's part of it. But I think it's more that we know what we want, and we know what we don't want, and what we don't want to waste time on. And that's actually a really good thing. I'm pleased. I have liked the process of aging, other than the fact that the world considers me irrelevant because I crossed the 50 mark. But
we're on the downhill.
What's that?
We're on the downhill.
Yeah, pretty much.
Exactly
I don't know if your skis are going faster than mine, but yeah, it's on the downhill.
Probably a little bit, but actually, this is the thing about the writer's life, and I think this is why I think I chose this to be more passionate about than, say, when I was a drummer, or a musician, or whatever, because all too often, like, we don't hit our stride until our 60s. And that's when people really start, like Don Winslow didn't really hit the top 10 in the New York Times bestseller list till he's in his 60s. And like all sorts of, like there's so many stories like that. Mm-hmm. It's just such a long process to achieve any kind of success. I mean, real success you have. That's one reason you're here, is because you have already done that. But I can bet you, if I ask you right now, if you're satisfied with how far with where your career is at, and if you never achieve any goal again, you'll be happy. I bet you that's not true. That you're still very hungry.
Yeah. There's still a couple of goals that I haven't accomplished yet, and I'm holding out hope that I can do that before I retire and ride off into the sunset. Although I'm sure I will always keep writing on some
You're
level.
Never going to retire.
I will retire. I will not be working 40 or 50 hours a week anymore. I will not be traveling every single month. But I will do it on a much smaller scale and just sort of cherry pick the things I want the most.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I want more awards. I got a group.
I got a few. They don't mean shit. They don't mean jack. But it is fun. I want them. It is fun for the moment.
I want them. I have to say, I got one this year as part of a group that wrote a sustainable.
That's right. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. But I really wanted a solo award, and I can't tell you how bad it burned me that I did not get a solo award this year. So I'm still like, I'm going to hang on until I get that damn solo award.
Well, I will tell you, an editor in Rhode Island whom you have spoken with,
Elise.
But afterwards, she approached me and she's like, I've heard of Robin. I've read some of her stuff. And I was like, wow, all right. And then somehow you guys got together or whatever. But it's just amazing how everybody has these different writing paths, yet we're all writers,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the beauty of it. Listen,
I have a little insane.
Oh yeah, we're absolutely crazy. We're out of our heads. I've taken up way too much of your time. Where can people find you and read some of your stuff?
Where can people find me? So you can look at my blog, which I am really terrible about updating, but I will try to be better. That is oncemoretothe shore.com. I also post my work fairly regularly on Instagram, which is also at Once More to the Shore. So it makes it kind of easy to remember. I am the world's worst tweeter or Xer or whatever the heck you call it these days. So whatever, you can look for me there, Robin_Catalano, but I'm not good at it. I hate social media.
I do too. We were just talking about this. I know. Yeah. It's just, I do too. What a necessary evil, but stress evil. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know if I even agree with necessary anymore, but.
I know. Well, we'll save that for the next time you come back. Will you come back?
I would love to come back.
All right, I'll catch you on one. Maybe I'll actually catch you in the field one day, which would be very cool.
That would be super cool.
All right. Robin Catalano, it was wonderful having you on the show.
Thank you so much. And
we will see you next time. And for everybody else, you know the words, ciao, ciao.